Yes. All
Mm,
right.
there we go.
Got it. All right, everybody, welcome to the Real Estate Titans call. This week we have my boy Josh Brandt. He's a hard money lender on the podcast, and he's going to educate us all things you need to know about financing for investment. That's fix and flip, hard money. What else? Capital for DSCR loans. If you don't know what that is, stay on the call because you're about to find out. Without further ado, Josh, introduce yourself, your background, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. What a intro, Arthur. Appreciate it, my friend. And thanks so much for the time, guys. Really appreciate it. You'll have to forgive me. My computer is a little jammed up right now, so I'm on the phone. Arthur, I sent you a little bit of a flyer. I don't know if you've been able to check your inbox, but over time, we may want to pull that up as a reference.
I will for sure.
That said, a little bit about me, guys. I've been in the residential real estate and development game for the better part of 20 years, if you can believe it or not. My background started in the fix and flip side of things. I have then transitioned into operating my own development company. When I moved back from the West Coast to the East Coast, I actually took a position with a good friend of mine, gentleman by the name of Jeremy Bowers, who worked with Mike McCann, which some of you may know. He's a top 10 agent within Keller Williams. I took over the KW Philly and KW Mainline role, which is now KW Empower, one of the top teams throughout the entire country, as the productivity coach. So I'm very familiar with all things residential side, very familiar with the KW model. From there, thanks, buddy. From there, I pivoted into the lending side to get back to really the development and the investment specialty realm, if you will. My company, Real Estate Syndicate Group, is an offshoot or a wholesale channel of Easy Street Capital, which I was formerly a partner of. Easy Street Capital, to give you kind of the high level background, it's a private equity real estate investment firm. We went out and raised about $300 million in private equity so that we could go out and purchase, renovate, and reposition properties all throughout the country. We started that in 2008. I left in 2014 after buying over 1,500 homes from foreclosure auctions, short sale, REO, various tapes, real estate agents, investors, direct mailers, you name it, right? In 2015, we did pivot from the actual development side into the lending. And what's in front of you is going to give you a little bit of breakdown. We really focus and specialize in three different verticals, okay? First is our easy fix, which is fix and flip, right? Quick in, quick out. Second is easy build. So that's our ground up construction product. And lastly is the easy rent, which is the DSCR, a fancy acronym for debt service coverage ratio, which is basically saying, hey, if I'm going to go out and build a rental portfolio, I want to make sure that the property makes more money than the actual payment, right? Don't get caught up in the lingo. That's basically in its simplest form. But what I wanted to really focus on, and Arthur, I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I want to go over just some high level information and then take any Q&A, right? But I want to gear it specifically to the real estate agent side of things, right? Something very unique and special about us because of our background in the fix and flip model, right? And the fact that we're a private lender or direct lender, we are ultimately the decision makers, right? What that means is we do not require an appraisal on any of our products. Arthur can speak to the time, the reliability, and the efficiency as to the products in which we offer. But speed, as we all know, is what wins and oftentimes kills deals, right? So looking at it from an investor's perspective, I think everybody on this call would agree, right, that it's much easier to find one person to buy 10 properties than it would to find 10 people to buy one property, right? With a typical product life cycle being anywhere from 6 to 8 years, you're recycling that client, right? Depending upon your market, staying in front of them, doing your touches, right? Your follow-up, so on and so forth for 6 years before you're seeing that turn back around. What we specialize in is working with investors, right? So going out and finding a dedicated list of professionals, right, that you can provide value to. And what separates us from other lenders is really our speed to close. I can share with you last month, I closed a deal in 20 hours, right? Now, mind you, that is, the exception and not always the rule. But the fact of the matter is that another lender couldn't perform, right? And at the very last second, the buyer was in the, up against an EMD that ultimately would have lost them over $20,000 if they couldn't settle. They came to us. We were able to negotiate and get terms out to them. clear title, collect any and all borrower and property specific documentation, and then close that loan within, again, 20 hours, which
That's
Forbes
amazing.
has named us, Easy Street Capital, the fastest lender in the entire country. Right. So when you see some of these other guys out there saying, oh, we can close in 7 to 10 days, I get kind of a chuckle because, the old adage, I don't know if you guys follow the Nike commercials, but, our fast is faster than your fast. Right.
I
Um,
love that.
so I want to kind of take a deep breath a little bit right there, as I'm throwing a lot of words and
Great.
adjectives and phrases at you. Arthur, what is it specifically that maybe we should talk on, or is there a case study, or should I go over some of the,
Yeah, let me jump in and just give a little story and example. So what he's talking about specifically right now is a fix and flip product. So this is a solution because we have a lot of realtors on the call. Is great if you have a buyer or cash buyer, flipper or investor, and they go, I found a great deal, but I don't have the capital. I was in a real estate investing class yesterday, which is a theme, right? We go all the time. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, I have a construction background. I'm gonna get back into construction, fixing houses. I'm like, why don't you flip? And he's like, well, right now I don't have capital. And I'm like, capital is never your problem. In this room, you have billions of dollars, plus myself, strategic partnerships, and you could get the money and the cash to make money. You just got to go find a deal. And Josh, what he's talking about is providing a solution that is not the bank. So, as you guys know, if you go to the bank and your buyer's trying to get financing, they're going to have to jump through hoops, credit, pre approval, background, 150 things just to get that loan. And then the seller, even in this market, even if you're not a flipper, they're gonna go, wait, Arthur's cash, no contingency. I'm going with Arthur. Josh has the solution to that problem. He can give your borrowers, your flippers, or yourself cash in as little as 20 hours. And personally, David and I have transacted a handful of deals with Josh, and it's like he guarantees you get the deal. Whatever you need. That's what he always tells me. Like, whatever you need done, I'm going to make it happen. So do you need a proof of funds, like a letter that says you have the cash? Boom, got it. You need to close in a week or two? Boom, got it. So this is a solution to the problem of having capital for properties that won't qualify for financing. Did I articulate that pretty good?
You certainly did. You're hired, right? If and when you
Can I?
ever want to get out of the retail side, but you're 100% right, guys. We transact just as cash, right? So when you're working with a ton of investors, right? For example, you're going up in a competitive market such as Boston and the greater Northeast, right? You guys are going out competing against these cash offers. And to what Author had spoke on, you know, agents at our core, what are we looking for? We're looking, where is that next commission check coming, right? So your offer, just to use an example of 400,000 compared to a competitor's offer of 410,000, the fact that you can close in 5 to 7 business days or as quickly as we can clear title, right? As opposed to the 30, 45, 60 contingent upon appraisal, inspection, XYZ, and it's just a really messy deal, is where you're going to be able to bridge the gap, not only for you if you're an investor, but also your client, right?
Mhm.
Because you want that co-agent, that cooperating agent to work with you on your behalf, right? At that point in time, as an investor, right, you had the first right of refusal to these wholesalers, to these real estate agents, to anybody that specializes because they know, right, with 3 to 5 minutes of information, and Arthur and David, you guys can attest to it, I can get any and all deals in front of my team and within a matter of hours deliver a term sheet, which is our guarantee to lend, right? What that means is there's no appraisal, there's no upfront fee, there's no prepayment penalty, right? We're going to look at the deal on an asset based or asset level based to make sure that obviously it makes sense, right? The acquisition, renovation, and after repair value all need to check out, right? It's like being a great chef. You could be the most amazing chef in the world, but if you're cooking with rotten, spoiled ingredients, right, the
Yep.
meal is still going to come out less than desirable. Okay, that's how we approach the real estate underwriting criteria. And with that term sheet, again, assuming that everything makes sense and checks out and some of the specs are here, and I'm more than happy to dive into them, either collectively or individually depending upon everybody's needs, but assuming that it meets our requirements, we're going to lend anywhere from 80 to potentially up to 93% of the total cost basis of that particular deal. When I say cost basis, what does that mean? It's basically the acquisition plus the renovation, right? So add those two numbers together, we're going to land anywhere from 80 to 93% of those numbers contingent first and
Eh,
foremost upon the property, right? The deal needs to make sense. And then after qualifying the asset, we're going to look at the borrower's really 3 different verticals, right? We're going to look at what type of experience do they have? I can work with zero experience, and I can work with, thousands of properties of experience. The more the merrier, right? And the more favorable terms you're going to see, both in leverage and cost, because that's an easier loan for me to bundle and tranche and sell on the secondary or capital market side. Second, I'm going to look at what is the credit profile, okay, of the personal guarantor. Do not need all persons on the loan. Say you have a 2, 3, 4 person entity, LLC, LLP, S corp, whatever it is. We need only one of that person to sign on as the personal guarantor, right? And we can utilize the qualifications of all partners, okay? So say one guy's done 10 deals, right, but has a 600 credit score for whatever reason, right? And then $200,000 in the bank. Well, one of their partners we can bring in and kind of bridge the gap a little bit, okay? It's on an asset by asset and deal by deal basis. But at the end of the day, like Arthur said, we're deal doers at the end of the day, right? The only way
Can
that
I
I'm able to
jump
make
into
money
this?
and feed my family is by me being able to bridge the gap between the money and the investment.
Can I
Okay,
jump into this and just add some value because this is a group of like,
please.
like so they're mostly real estate agents, but I just want to add something and this is so critical. In this room alone, like this little Zoom, you have strategic money partners and experienced partners where like say for example a deal can make us 150 grand and you can't do it on your own. You bring in David Moneybags, he can cover that 20%. So you're getting into a deal that you found with almost zero capital and you could still get profit, whether that's a listing on the back end or that's a strategic partnership. And say you bring in Arthur and you say, hey Arthur, I don't have any experience, so I'm not getting favorable terms from Josh. Now Arthur has the experience, David has the money gap, and together we go in there and we could do a deal where the profit may be $100,000, where by yourself you were just gonna do nothing with that deal, right? Sell it to a competitor, a wholesaler, or somebody else who's gonna go in there, profit on something you found, but we're not able to execute. So don't be afraid to look at like what Chrisula was saying on the call earlier, don't be afraid to find us and ask us, hey, this is what I have for a deal. How can we make this work? Now, to switch gears a little bit, we also teach on this call for a lot of our agents to be real estate investors. And I think a lot of them have a hard time getting started into like the multifamily game or even a condo game or, getting into their first deal. So can we talk a little bit about DSCR? Because for years as a real estate agent, I didn't even know what that was. And the fact that you could buy homes without qualifying technically for a mortgage.
100%. DSCR, if you're looking at the page here, is going to be filed under our Easy Rent. Okay, that's our long-term financing solution for any and all stabilized asset. That's whether you're going in and purchasing a turnkey rental property or you're going through, and I'm sure we've heard the acronym of BRRRR, right? For any investor. That's going in and creating the equity yourself. And then ultimately, instead of selling the property, you're simply going to refinance it and keep it as a part of your portfolio. Okay. So in that situation, let's say you're buying a property for $200,000, right? You're going to put $50,000 into it so that ultimately it's worth 350 at the end of the day. Not, amazing, right? Margins, but at the end of the day, still very, very strong for either option. Okay. If you were to go in and ultimately decide you want to keep that property as a rental portfolio, right? Great passive income, because let's face it, as realtors, right? The day that we retire is the day that those commission checks stop, right?
100%.
So we need to be in the mindset of, hey, how do we grow generational and passive income, right? And keeping it simple, stupid. You guys having a pulse as to what's going on in the market, being, market disruptors, right, up there in the best way possible. If I know anything about Arthur and David, going out there and, being aggressive, not only with your portfolio, but also going out and finding these clients. The retail client, the retail borrower is much different than the investor. Okay. They're not, how do I say this gently? They're not overly, interested in what color the door is or, where does it back up to. At the end of the day, it comes down to the brass tacks and the numbers. So going in and completing that, either putting it back on the market at 350 or refinancing up to 75, potentially 80% of that $350,000 value. Okay. Now, let's, if we're doing it 80% at 350 is 70, so $280,000, right? You're going to refinance that property. You're still making $300 or $400 at the end of the day. And if you're only into it for 260, right? Well, you've made $20,000 and or covered the cost of doing business, right? Acquisition settlement, disposition settlement, right? Because it's two separate transactions. So you've gotten in and out of a property in ideally 2 to 3 months, right? And you've added a property to your portfolio, right?
That's amazing.
Imagine what that would look like and how that would snowball if you're able to do that once a quarter, right?
You could do that all day long because you're getting into deals with almost zero down if you build enough equity, right?
We're really only limited, right, by your bandwidth, your creativity, and how much money we have in the bank. Okay. So in that situation, right, our total cost basis is $250,000. Okay. If say we're financing 90% of that, you're out of pocket $25,000, or not out of pocket, but that's your equitable contribution to the deal,
Yeah,
right? Because it's not a fee, it's not a charge, it's still your money. It's just showing that, hey, us, the lender, and you, the operator, have an aligned interest in seeing this to and through fruition. Okay.
yeah,
At the end of the day, if something were to go haywire, and we've all seen it happen, the last thing I want is for it to be easy for somebody to walk away, right? That's hence the skin in the game. Okay. Building out that DSCR portfolio is going to be crucial, not only, from a tax perspective, from an income perspective, from, building out opportunities to continue to grow and scale your business, but it also creates the opportunity to, if you're getting into the Burr method, not really focus on, hey, what corners can I cut, or where can I, look at a cost savings, right? We're putting ourselves into not how much are we making or saving, but how many can we get into? Because then it simply becomes, hey, we're doing one of three different paint schemes. We're doing one of three different appliance packages. We're doing one of three different flooring options, right? We're doing these fixtures in every single property. So then it just becomes rinse and repeat, much like Arthur was saying. Um,
absolutely. And since we're pressing upon time, I see you got here and also an easy build. And David and I have been wanting to get into build because I went to a real estate investment class yesterday, and the guy was like, the best way to get listings is to create your own inventory, right? Whether
100%.
that's
Build to rent
condo
is on fire
conversion
right now.
or ground up construction, like easy build product. Tell us a little bit about that, how that works, what experience is needed, all the good stuff.
100%. So we, much like the easy fix on the easy build, we can get started with zero experience. Okay.
Wow.
That's going to be a lower leverage point, right? So that's going to be 75% of the total cost basis. But the way we analyze those deals are, right, because nothing is ever guaranteed. More times than not, we're going to have our operator go out and acquire the lot and get it fully entitled or shovel ready, right? So now they're ready to break ground. They're ready to start moving the dirt, right? They come to us and say, hey, Josh, I bought the dirt for $50,000. I've got $25,000 in soft costs, permits, licensing, architectural rendering, so on and so forth, right? And then I've got a build out cost of, let's say, 125, right? Just to use round numbers. So that means you're all in at $200,000. We're going to look at that as a collective and say, okay, we think this is a strong deal. At $200,000, okay, we're going to lend, call it 75%, which is 150. So your equitable contribution is only 50,000, but you've already spent 75, okay? Because we can reimburse for soft costs. Well, at settlement, okay, we're going to absorb the $50,000 equitable contribution. So we'll take first trust deed on the property, right, with a construction lien behind it. And then we would then cut you a check for $25,000 minus your settlement costs, right? So there's always going to be title, there's always going to be transfer taxes, there's always going to be, depending upon your municipality, right, different fees associated with that. But at the end of the day, right, you're out of pocket $75,000. You've proven that it's a great deal. Okay. We're going to come back and give you 25 back, and we're going to fund 100% of the renovation done in draws. And this is very important. Whenever you're speaking with high level operators or contractors, they're going to ask about the draw schedule. Okay. Ours is very simple. You can do as few or as many draws as you decide. We do not require a third party inspection. We have proprietary software that, with the submittal of your invoices, right, and any receipts for cost of goods, we're going to be able to send out our app, right, for all intents and purposes. And once you take pictures on your phone so that we can geo track that location to ensure that, it's at 123 Main Street and whatnot, not, 154 Main Street, right? We can see that the work has in fact been completed. We're going to wire that capital directly back to your account within 24 to 48 hours. which is going to be very crucial from an operational perspective to make sure that your GCs aren't looking over the fence and getting called on other jobs because you're slow to deliver payment, right? Or not keeping them actively engaged on any deal. So
That's
that's kind of the high level. It's a non-Dutch interest product, which means you're only paying, much like a home equity line of credit, you're only paying off of what is drawn. We can fund those deals just as quickly. However, there is more due diligence on the borrower side up front, right? Because the last thing we want to do is say, Arthur comes to me and says, "Hey, Josh, here's a great single family home. I know by right I can turn it into a fourplex, right? It's going to be worth $2 million. I'm buying it for $2 and a hot dog. It's an
$2 too
amazing
hot.
deal. There's too much speculation behind that, right? I don't know if that's a 1 month turn time to get fully entitled. I don't know if it's a 10-month turn time, right? So me as the lender, I don't want to have my capital exposed to something that ultimately may not turn in or turn out to come to fruition. I want to put myself in a position to where, all right, I know that we've already got plans set. We're already shovel ready, right? This is going to be anywhere between a 6 and 9 month build out with a 12-month term. And at month, call it 6 or 7, I'm going to look into saying, hey, if you want to retain this property as opposed to flipping it, here are what some of the numbers look like from the DSCR so that I can get you out of the higher interest rate, easy build product and into the more stabilized, lower interest rate, long term, easy rent or DSCR product.
That's amazing. And if you guys don't know, like if you have friends, you got to invite them on this call because now that you do know how to do these deals, you got so much more in your back pocket in terms of opportunities, right? That's whether now you know how to fix and flip your own house, where to get the money, or to buy and hold, or to build and create inventory, or to partner with people, or to work with investors and builders. Now you're more educated on how to do that. And think about how much money we just made you if you could just do one deal. Now I'm going to tell you something else this guy told me yesterday at the training. You get into the game and just think about our market. And I love doing this exercise, right? Because it gets you guys to think. I'm looking at your eyes. Even if you're not on camera, I could see through your soul. So think about the inventory and how much it's rising every year, right? So if you own anything in our area, it's probably going up 30, 50, 60, 100 grand a year in some cases, just by you being in the deal. So by the time you finish a lot of these deals, you made 50 grand, not on renovation, but just on the improvement. So our last deal, David and I, we did it in 6 months in Boston. We were into it. We're like planning to make 50 grand. We doubled our return simply by being in it for 6 months because the market is appreciating so rapidly. Now imagine if you're using the DSCR product and you own these properties. Just think about the guy that did the presentation yesterday. Like David and I roughly own 10 units. We fix and flip a couple houses a year. This guy owns 60. So while my 2 units, David and I, we went from 1 million to 1.5 million in just appreciation without doing any work. Multiply that times 60 or 30, because I just gave you an example of two, right? You, by being in the game, are making so much money that eventually you will not have to sell real estate. And the amount of realtors that retire broke, top producing realtors that have no money in the bank is astonishing, right? It's absolutely shocking. And actually, Josh, we're going to have to talk online because I didn't realize how much experience you have in actually fix and flip and finding deals because I want to scale and take this to the next level with David and I. So I'd love to talk to you more offline, set up a coffee or have you sponsor our next event. We're going to do a live Real Estate Titans event with some great speakers, and I'd love to have you there. But before we wrap up this call, is there anything else you think that people can do to get started? Like if they're brand new, they don't know where to go, like a podcast or a book you recommend to start to ease in and doing some research and some education.
Yeah, a lot of the bigger ones, bigger pockets, is just an infinite, right, supply of information. So much so that at times I feel like I'm drinking, out of a fire hose, right? It's just coming at you full fledged. I think Gary Keller has a great one. It's the Red Book, only for investment, right? The Millionaire Real Estate
Millionaire real
Agent.
estate investing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got a great one, right? That stays on brand within Keller Williams. But before we go, I really just want to speak as to time being the most valuable commodity, right? That any of us have. right? That's the only commodity we're never going to get back. So us as real estate agents, if I'm working with an investor and say, hey, I'm looking at this price point in this area and there's 7 different assets, right, available. You don't want to put them in a car, right? Friday or Saturday, drive them to 7 different assets. Okay. What you're going to do as a very smart real estate agent is do a lot of the legwork up front. If there's 7 properties, right, you can immediately wipe out 2 of them, right? So now there's 5, right? Come to me on a Thursday and say, Josh, here are 5 assets I'm looking at. I'm going to say, okay, right? Let's spend 3 minutes on each one, a collective of 15 to 20 minutes, right? Tell me about those deals. Let me get them in front of my team. Of those 5 assets, 2 may not make sense, right? And 3 do. Okay. Now you're taking your client, instead of driving them around to 7 different property or potentials, now you've already done the due diligence to whittle that down to 3. And because you have a term sheet or a guarantee to lend, because my team has already looked at that deal, you're walking into these showings, you're walking into these appointments with a loaded gun, or, full of ammunition. I'm sorry, bad analogy, but you're walking into these appointments with, you know, ideally, right, your agreement of sale and a pen right there readily available. If you like the property and if it makes sense, submit that offer right then and there and tell them, hey, today's Saturday, agent, I'm going to put a check in your pocket by Friday, right? Because I know
Wow.
that I've got my due diligence, right? It's non-contingent upon an appraisal, and that's really where you're going to win a lot of these deals, right? And you're going to run into the cost savings, right? So someone's going to accept your $400,000 offer before that 410, before 415, and you just saved yourself 3 hours. And from a real estate investor's perspective, right? The fact that you've done all of this and all I have to do is make sure the numbers that you've put in front of me make sense. That's the greatest godsend ever. Okay. So now you're getting, as a real estate agent, you're getting a referral fee from me, which we can talk about at a different time, right?
Ooh.
You're capturing, right, the real estate transaction on the front, and then with your real estate investor, you're already signing that listing agreement, and you're going to post date it so that now you're representing that guy on the exit as well. Okay. So that's 3 different income verticals you've created off of one transaction. Imagine what it would look like if you went out and found 5 investors, right? Each of them doing 1 or 2 a month. That's your entire business portfolio. And you don't have to deal about the concerns and the quals and the 9 p.m. phone calls from your retail borrowers that are so upset over the most trivial things, right? That you and I know as experienced real estate agents really don't mean anything, right? So being able to buy back your time, right? Being able to put yourself in a position to where you have a deliverable to your investor clients is worth its weight in gold. And if you guys don't have the clients, go to any one of these, development investor group meetups, right? And go in and say, hey, I have a product that doesn't require an appraisal, can close in, 24 to 48 hours if and when necessary. And there is zero, I repeat, this is a huge one, zero out of pocket expense to the borrower until we get to the settlement table, right? So it's not like you're spending $600, $700, $800 to get an appraisal only for somebody to say, hey, the property really doesn't work out. Sorry, you're out that money. I would much rather give you a fast no as opposed to a long and drawn out maybe. So
Yeah.
it's allowing you to buy back your time, right? Have deliverables to your clients, right? And then set up a system to where you rinse and repeat. Once you work with these borrowers once or twice, all you got to do, and Arthur and David do it all the time. God bless them. They say, Josh, 123 Main Street, we're buying at 300, we're putting 100 into it. Let me know. And then I text back, I'm on it. I'll hit you back in a couple of hours with our borrower's response. And there's a million different ways in which you can, make money off of it, whether it's you as a client, borrower, investor, or if you're going out and working on their behalf, right? What is it worth putting that sign up, on the entire block because you went and door knocked, right? You captured 3 or 4 of these underdeveloped properties. You took them to one investor, and now your sign is on 5 different doors, right? What
Wow.
type of branding and marketing would that look like, right? Not only to your team, but to your market center, right? To your productivity coach, to, let's face it, your wife, your husband, right? Your significant other, right? You're going out there and you're creating not only inventory, but you're creating your client base because everybody wants to do, HGTV, fix and flip. Everybody thinks they can do it and get away from the corporate rat race. Right here, you have a vehicle for them to do so. And we take a
Absolutely.
common sense approach. I'm a normal person. I'm an everyday guy. Arthur, when we're on the phone, it's half business. It's half kind of breaking stones and telling me how great Boston sports is compared to Philly sports, which are my teams. And look, at the end of the day, guys, I want to do all of the deals, right? That's how I feed my family. That's how I grow and expand my market share, right? Let's take a common sense approach. Arthur, if you haven't already, please share my contact information. I'd
I
love to
will
reach
for
out
sure.
to all persons and in whatever capacity, right?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is actually going to be a
Can I
podcast.
add
We're
to
going to
this?
send it out to everyone. So I'm just going to wrap us up. Then I'm going to open it up for questions. But couple things to what Josh said. If you do have deals, you have clients right here. David and I will buy your fix and flip products. We'll let you be the buyer agent. We list with you. Okay. If we list a property, you're going to get the listing. So that's, you have a client right there. Go get 5 more. The other thing that I want to just wrap up with a story before I turn off the recording and open up for questions. I listened to a top #1 agent for like 10 years. I think it was like Remax or one of those companies. And they were like, how are you the #1 agent? And basically the premise was like this. Think about it this way. Each one of your clients, whether your database is 100 or 1,000, transacts once every 7 years. What he would do is teach his clients, 150, to become real estate investors. And he said, hey, this is the benefit of investing in real estate. And instead of once every 7 years, they would transact 7 times a year on average. So just think about like 150, right? Or just take 20. Just take 20. Take 10. If you get 10 people to do 7 transactions with you, right? 10 times 7 is 70. You would be 10 times better than the average real estate agent. So I'm going to sign us off from the call, Real Estate Titans. Josh, I'll send it to you. That was amazing. Stay on the call. If anybody has questions, we could take our time and wrap that up as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the session. You're going to make a lot more money than your friends who didn't show up. So good job showing up. And now if we just got you one extra deal a year, we made you some money.
Yeah.
All right.
And